travel all over the country, cooking, being hired, and very much in the local area. And I'm going to start just showing you what people ask me for the most, because that's my barometer. Is this what people want? But you're welcome to suggest anything. I'm not trained in culinary anything. I just happen to be cooking for a really long time. And when I started in the conscious world, there weren't a lot of people ahead of me. So I had to sort of figure it out on my own. So one of the things that I want to do today is I wanted to do kale pesto, because I have to tell you, when it comes to making pesto and using basil, it costs a lot of money. You know, because basil's expensive and you need a lot, unless you're growing your own food, which I have a community garden and I just started growing my own. Hopefully inspire you to sort of think outside of the box, meaning that, you know, I am the kind of person that when I buy it as it is on the rack, meaning whatever shirt, pants, whatever, however they have it put together is the way I would normally buy it. I didn't really have much imagination regarding how to coordinate clothing. And in the kitchen, I was always just a straight up recipe follower. And the reality is that when you live on the road for as long as I did, and when you're doing things like that, you don't always have, even right now, you don't always have access to a lot of the regular ingredients. So I'm going to try and add a twist to everything, just to inspire you to think outside of the box. If you want to make your pesto with kale or with basil, by all means. I'm using kale because A, it's cheaper and it tastes just as good, and you know, the nutrients are just different. And the reality is I can't eat a lot of raw vegetables, but when they're small like this in a pesto, it's easier for my stomach. So hopefully you guys can see this. You can see me over here. I kind of pre-measured everything. I didn't finish cutting all my garlic. And I'm going to tell you that even when I do cooking classes, I really don't get, my grandmother was the kind of cook where she couldn't really give you a recipe. She'd be like, you know, this much of that, put that in until it's a little drier, but you don't want it too doughy. Like, that's how her recipes were. So when it comes to making pesto and things like this, you really don't have to get so hung up. So let's say you don't have a cup of nuts or pine nuts, or we're going to use sunflower seeds instead of pine nuts today. That's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. I don't have lemon, and I thought I had lemon essential oil. Normally I would add a little lemon to this, but today we're not. It's okay. It's just really having fun. And I am the kind of person that if I make something that doesn't really taste great, I still eat it. It's not like punishing myself, but it's like, okay, by tasting it, I feel like it gives me the tools to realize like what I really need in the next time. Because developing recipes, most of the time, things don't taste good the first, second, third, or fourth time. It takes a while to get it right. So I never feel like I'm wasting food because I do eat it, because it's never totally gross. I mean, if it was, I would get rid of it. One time, me and my sister made a cake. We thought we were using a recipe from my grandmother's, but literally when we took the cake out of the oven, it was heavy. It was like a brick. I don't know what we did to it, but like we couldn't eat it, you know? So I'm not saying I eat but most of the time things don't taste so bad that I'm wasting food. So what I did here, and I have this recipe, so you don't have to write anything down. I'll be happy to send you the link. It's on my website. If you want it, you know, you can just sort of enjoy. But the God's honest truth is, when I moved into this apartment, I didn't have anything but what was in my van. So I didn't even have a food processor. So, you know, I got this food processor. It's not a fancy schmancy one, but I was really surprised because the last food processor I bought was like $150, and this is like $30. So you can actually kind of find a lot of this equipment if you don't have a food processor, maybe not as expensive as it was before. How long will this last? I don't know. But I can tell you that I use it, I'd say once a week. So for once a week usage, I've had it for not quite a year, maybe 10 months. It's, even if it broke down, it still was only $30-something versus $150. So I just wanted to share that. Whereas when it comes to my knives, I spend $1,000 on my knives because it's so important, and use of my hands for me is so precious. So I just sort of wanted to share that I don't have like a Vitamix, or I don't have, and I'm not saying if you have it, anything wrong with it, but for a lot of us, we get hung up with not being able to afford a lot of the equipment. And you can actually even do this in a NutriBullet, this recipe, if you don't have a food processor. And you could do it in a Vitamix, and you could probably do it in a blender if you have a blender that has a puree or a pulsing action. So you don't even necessarily need a food processor, but that's what I'm doing this in, so you know. I have a head of garlic here, and again, everything that I bought here is organic, and let's just talk about that. A lot of us don't have the resources to buy organic, and I understand that, especially now. I mean, my own daughter, you know, no job, no income, and she's, you know, almost in her third trimester of pregnancy. It's very scary for a lot of us. So organic may be one of the first areas that you can save money. The only thing that I would recommend is don't get hung up on it. But if you're going to get hung up on organic, there are a few things that I would recommend you make sure, if you possibly can, that they are organic. And leafy greens like kale would be one of them. They have a super high pesticide load. So lettuces, kale, collards, things like that. If you can afford to buy them organic, please consider doing that. Also, berries, any berries that you would eat, apples, and then coffee. Those are the four things that pretty much, I mean, there have been times when I, not that long ago, went to a coffee shop to get a cup of coffee. That in California, a cup of coffee is like $5. And I didn't have the $5. So I understand what, you know, not having access and resources and financial security is. I don't have financial security. So, you know, I understand when you have to make cuts, but I really try my hardest to make sure those four things, again, greens, apples, berries, and coffee, are always organic if I can afford it, because they have a high pesticide load. And if I can't, then I try and do more detoxification things, because I know, like when you go out, let's say, I mean, not that we're going out now, but back in the good old days when we were going out and able to eat, you know, not every strawberry in a salad or a berry salad was organic, but that wouldn't stop me from getting the salad. Like, I'm not scared to death that it's going to set me back, but I also limit my exposure, and when I can, and I make sure to maybe be in front of my near-infrared sauna more, get more vitamin D, or, you know, do more aerobics to sweat things out, because that's detoxing. You know, I just try and counterbalance things. But when you're thinking about what do I have money for and where can I make cuts, you know, Dr. Terry Walls, who I worked with for a long time, and at the time when I worked with her, she was still at the VA working with veterans, and she would say time and time again, doesn't have to be grass-fed, doesn't have to be organic. It's just better if you're eating whole foods, even if they're not the cleanest possible, than eating stuff out of a box that's processed. And it's one area we don't have to be. A lot of people have fancy choppers, and I know you can do that, but my grandmother every morning started the day chopping garlic, and I like to channel my family when I'm cooking. So every bit of garlic that I chop, my mom is with me. So, and I'm like getting emotional, I'm like gonna cry. So that's why I do it that way. But there's many ways that you can do garlic. I prefer to do exactly the way my grandmother taught me, because then I'm bringing her in the space with me. You can actually see my kale is a little sort of yellowed and kind of looking yucky. This is like the perfect time to make pesto, because it's maybe not as ideal. If you don't want to make pesto with your vegetables when they get like this, maybe, you know, throw them in a crock pot or just saute your greens. I can't really eat a lot of raw greens because I can't digest them. So what I'm going to do while I'm talking is I'm just going to pull the greens off the stem and just put them right in the food processor. Now, a lot of people, I mean, you can actually look, there's, you know, well, this one I might, there's some significant dirt here. I typically eat the dirt just because it's organic and dirt is good. It's funny because this one is more sandy. I don't like sand. I don't mind dirt. This one is covered in sand. So we'll rinse off the sand, but I'm really going to allow for a lot of it. Hearing that this is organic soil that's on here, and I'm sure you guys are like, oh my God, there's COVID-19. I can't believe she's even saying this. I did soak it in, and you normally I just look inside. See, this one's not dirty. So I'm just going to peel it and put it right in there. This helps build a healthy microbiome, you know, and again, how did I learn this? I was living with Dr. Walls, and she's like, no, eat the dirt, don't rinse it. Because when I would live with her, she's the cook, and I would give her a break, so I would cook for them. And she saw me getting ready to rinse things. Like, Terry would never get rid of this. So Dr. Walls would take this, have you roast, put it, oil in it, stick it in the oven and roast it. I don't particularly like it. You actually probably could put this in there and it would not be a negative at all. I don't. I've never tried it, but I can guarantee you that if Dr. Rawls is making this recipe, that's what she would do. So yeah, so again, now here you go. This inside is again fairly dirty. I'm sure you're probably like, oh my God, this lady's crazy. When I do the cooking classes, I always tell people you have the choice. You can either rinse it or not. Everyone rinses it. No one doesn't rinse it. So I know everyone thinks I'm crazy that I eat dirt, but Josh Axe wrote a book called Eat Dirt. So I might be crazy, but I've been considered crazy throughout my whole healing journey. I'm kind of used to it. So this was 2 heads, and I'm probably going to start with just filling it up all the way like I have here. Maybe put 1 more in there. And then I'll add some of the other ingredients. Now, you can, and most recipes will call for you to roast pine nuts. And how you do that, you can just put them in a tray, in a baking tray in the oven with a little salt and roast. I did not roast. I'm using sunflower seeds. I didn't roast them, but you certainly can. These are raw, organic. They do have salt. So since they have salt, I'll remember that when I'm adding salt to my pesto. And then I'm just going to pour half of this. This is a cup in here because I only have half. I'm going to let this sort of fall down a little bit. Olive oil. I have 2 cups here. I'm going to pour a cup in. And you can use really any oil. So I use an avocado garlic here. And I've just been quite simply, easily just chopping them. And I'm a messy cook. That's why when I was growing up, my mom would never let me cook in the kitchen because she said I was a mess. I kind of am a messy cook. So yes, this is just a whole head of garlic. And there is, I'm sure a lot of you know, and just in case people may not, which is a list that they come out with that tells you what are the highest pesticide loads. So things like onions are usually okay to buy not organic because they don't have a high pesticide load. Sometimes it's hard to find organic garlic. I don't get too hung up on that. Personally, I don't. Like I said, because I gave a talk yesterday at Antioch about toxic home, and the reality is we can only really do the best we can do. And it's a balance. It's always a constant balance. So I do the Rachel Ray thing too. I have a little bowl. Is that like the best idea ever? Like, why did it take Rachel Ray for me to realize that I didn't have to keep walking back and forth to the trash? I could just fill everything. You know what I mean? It's like, why do I need Rachel Ray to teach me that? My own brain. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, my own brain couldn't engage that thought. It's such a simple concept. So I'll pour the garlic in here, and I'm putting all of it in there. And then just because this is pretty high up, I'll put the lid on it, and we're just gonna, I don't know, can you see all my cast irons? I literally just leave them on the sink and use them all day long. But a lot of them I got at Goodwill. Like this one I got for $3. Isn't that cute? Just for cast iron. And sometimes I just walk right up to the area where they have the cast iron and I get lucky and it's great. And then there are other times nothing. But I've even bought so many that now I'm giving them to my friends. So that there's like a waiting list. Okay, so this is kind of the shitty part because it's going to be noisy. But I'm going to just hit the puree. Okay, now you can see that this is going to make a ton. And I'm actually probably going to add just a little more oil because I do have a little more kale than normal. Again, this is my grandmother channeling. It's like, I just add a little bit. But the reason why I like to make a lot is because it can stay in the refrigerator for a while. So what do you use it on? I use it with lasagna, with eggs, with pasta. I grilled up some chicken. Well, didn't grill. I really sauteed some chicken yesterday. I'll put it on top of that. Pretty much anything you can think of, you can add pesto to. On steak, it's almost like, to me, just like chimichurri. You make a little chimichurri, you can add that to anything. and it does stay. You actually, if you wanted, you could take this and put it in an ice cube tray and then stick it in the freezer and then just pop out cubes as you need them. That's what my grandmother, they had a cube, her whole backyard was a garden, and she was in the habit of doing that a lot. Just, putting a lot of things in ice cube trays, especially because they did can and things like that. So we had food. Back east, you don't have a large growing season. So I'm going to add the rest of the oil in here. Back east, we didn't have a huge growing season. And now I'm going to add the rest of the pumpkin seeds and some Redmond real salt. My visual would be this will be about a tablespoon of salt because I do have salt on the pumpkin seeds. All right, now we're just going to do what we did the last time. And I just watch it just to make sure that it's at a consistency that I like. That's the other thing. If you read any of the recipes that I write, even when it comes to like taking things out of the oven, it's always preferred done. I like everything a little charred. I like things more chunky, not totally smooth. Like I make lumpy mashed potatoes. So I think, again, there has to be some freedom of expression when we're cooking. And again, I used to be a rigid recipe follower, but I also was super sick back in that day when I was a rigid recipe follower. So having a little more freedom seems to also wear well on me physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every possible way. Okay, sorry. Here we go. I get so excited when it gets that last big piece. Oh my God, the garlic. This is just really divine. So I'm going to put some in a little bowl so you can kind of see the consistency that I like. So just opening a drawer for me I wasn't able to do that. So like all of these little things, like every time I go to open a drawer, I'm like, it's like a real miracle. So this is the consistency that I like. It's kind of dense. Can you see that my lighting sucks? I do have, let me tell me if this helps. Oh, it's even worse probably. I don't know. Can you see that better? But you could make this, it's not going to get creamy because of the seeds, but you could certainly make it less, because if you have younger kids, they might be like, oh, it's kale, I tend to, leave it like that. So this made a bunch. Now, you can see it made a bunch, like a lot. So I'm going to store this in containers, and I'll put some in the freezer and some in the refrigerator. I love it on scrambled eggs, which is a way that a lot of people probably don't think about using a pesto. I do like to just take a chicken breast and put some pesto on top, a little roasted, some roasted peppers on top of that, and that's just a great meal. But also, this is a good way to get greens in, because does this look like, that was at least, we filled this up twice, 8-9 cups of greens. You have just a little serving like this. I try and eat 3 cups of greens. This is at least 2 cups right here, and it's just such a nice way to have it rather than a salad. Summertime and warmer weather is coming, so I tend to eat salads then, but in the winter, I don't want a salad. Like, I don't know why I don't like regular salads in the winter. I like spinach, sauteed spinach, warm things, roasted veggies. You can actually even heat this up. So a lot of times I'll take a chicken breast and just put it on top and then just put it in the oven, get it a little warm. You can use it that way as well. And again, you can store it in the freezer and in the refrigerator. I put it in a mason jar, and I can tell you I've had it fine in my refrigerator for up to 10 days, but I don't really know because it has olive oil in it. What are the ingredients? But I don't really know how long, I always taste things, smell things, do it that way. But you can use collards if you want. You can use, you can also put, normally I put lemon, and a lot of people do use nutritional yeast, and that will taste like Parmesan cheese if you're dairy free. You can actually add that right in here. And if you were going to add it in there and you really wanted it to be cheesy, I would probably say about a half a cup with this recipe would work. Yeah, arugula also. Yeah, definitely. Any leafy green you can think of. And if I was using arugula or collards, I would probably definitely want to make sure I put some sort of a lemon or citrus in there because they can be a little bitter and it'll cut that bitterness for you. Yeah, so get creative. And just because, like, again, make sure that you're making meals that support your body and your needs. That's what biohacking truly is.